Hi guys, welcome to another Divi theme video. This is Jamie from System22 and webdesignandtechtips.com. Well, today we're going to look at the Divi button module. Buttons are essential for your site. With a button you can take people wherever you want, whether it's on your site or to a different section or off-site to anywhere else. But you can also style these things to look really interesting. And in this video I'm going to show you a few different tricks to make some awesome little buttons. And when we've done with the buttons, I'll show you how you can make any module into a button really easily. This is another in our Divi for Beginners video series, and the link for that is down below the video here. So let's get started. I'm going to enable the Visual Builder. Okay, let's go down. I'll pop in a new little section here. Blue button for a section. I'm going to use a regular section. Inside that section, for this particular demo, I'm going to use a single column. And funnily enough, we're going to use the Divi button module right there. Just left click, it'll pop it in. And there it is. And you may be wondering, well, okay, why is it orange with white writing? If you watched any of our previous videos, we set this up in our theme customizer. So every time we add a button, it's got the colors that we dictated here. But of course, any button can have any colors. Now, if you're wondering where this was set up, if you didn't see that video, if you go to your dashboard, down to Appearance and Customize, or you can also go down to Divi and Theme Customizer, they both take you to the same place. Now that's right here. And if we look down, we've got a little tab called Buttons here. And we set the style in there. We set our fonts, our colors, and we also set a hover style here. But of course, we're customizing our buttons today. Just wanted to explain why that was orange and white. Okay, when you first open your button module, it's going to look a bit like this. Let's shrink this up a little bit. All these modules got a little handle on the side. You can expand it, contract it how you want so it fits for your needs. You can also dock it on the sides and things like that. Okay, when you first get into a button, it gives you this. Put what you want your button to say. Down below is the important part, where you want to take people with your button. Put your URL in there. If you're linking to your own site, obviously keep it in the same window, or if you're using it to link to a different section, so we've done that before, keep it in the same window. If you're linking off-site, somebody else's site, open it in a new tab. That way your site's going to stay open. Down under there is an admin label. For anybody who doesn't know what an admin label is, I'll show you quickly. If I hit the little purple button here, left-hand side, we've got a little icon there, wireframe view. I click on it. It'll take us to the back end here. Now there's our button module. There's the row it's sitting in. There's the section. There's the admin label. It says button. You can change it to anything you want. And if you've got a very busy site with a lot of buttons on it, it's a great idea to name these things. That way, if you go to the back end, you can find exactly the one that you're looking for very quickly. For instance, here, if you've got 4 images, you don't know which one to edit. If they've got different admin labels, you know which one's which. Great. So let's flip back to desktop view. And go back up to our button. So we've now got our button there. It's got a link. It's got a new admin label there. If we go over to our design tab here, we can decide where to align it. Obviously, it's on the left by default. Put it in the middle. It's behind this thing here. Or on the right. Remember, we've got one column sitting behind there, so it's positioning it within that column there. I think I'll pop mine in the middle. Okay. Down below, if we go into text, just gives you the option to turn the writing from light to dark. But if we go down below into button, there's a little button there that says use custom style for button. We can do anything we want with this button. You can make the text size bigger or smaller. You can type in, you can slide, and you can increment up and down with the little arrows there. Let's perhaps make this 16 pixels a little bit smaller. Just put in the 16, it'll put the pics in for you. Button text color. Obviously choose whatever color you want for yours. And this is what I was saying. You can style this any way you want. Any button can have any styling on it. You can go down to the background. You can change the background color here. Whatever color you want for your button. I'll leave it on that blue for a minute, but you can also add gradients. I'll come back to the gradients because you can get some amazing effects. If you want to, you can also use a little background image in there. Like I say, I'll come back to this when we build a little bigger button, and we'll style it with a gradient and show you how to split colors into two. Okay, if you want a border on there, we've got button border width. If I increment up there, you're not seeing anything. If I make that black, see that border appearing there. Make it as big or as small as you want. Just for fun, I'm going to give this a white border. I'm going to make it 3 pixels, just so we can see what's going on. I'll turn this section black. I just roll down a bit. It's got my social media floating buttons there. I'm going to go into the section. Background's always under content. Let's just give it a black background. Great, you can see the white border around that button there. Let's go back into our button. Continue where we left off, which was design, button. And we just gave it that white border by giving it 3 pixels and the color white. Now button border radius. If you want no rounded corners, if you want a completely square button, put a 0 in there. Or slide that slider all the way to the left. You've got a square button. If you want slightly rounded corners, put in a small pixel value. And it'll curve out those corners. The bigger the value, the more curved those corners are going to be. If you want it completely round, give it a high value. And you can make things into complete circles. This won't work with this unless we give it a bit more padding, by using 50% instead of pixels up there. But less letter spacing, obviously, that's the space between the letters. With anything you do with Divi, if you don't like what you've done, you want to undo it, just select it, delete it. It'll go back to the default value for you. You can choose any font you want for your button. Divi has got a crazy amount. To audition any font, just roll over it. It'll give you an example like that. I'm going to leave mine on the default today. You can choose whether it's light, regular, semi-bold, bold, or ultra bold. And that's the weight of it. Mine's by default set to semi-bold, I believe. If I bold it, you'll see it gets a bit deeper. I'm going to put that back on regular, I believe. You can capitalize, italicize, have upper and lowercase capitals, underline, strike through if you want to. I'm just going to leave mine on regular capital. Now you can choose to show a button icon. If I roll over this button, by default it puts one in there when you hover over it. You can choose what icon you want to use, or if you don't want to use an icon, if we roll up a little bit, show button icon. If you don't want one at all, you can turn that to off. But there's plenty of options. Okay, let's choose one. I'll use a simple right arrow right there. As you can see, it's popped it in on the right. You can choose to have it on the right or the left, obviously. I'm going to leave mine on the right. If you click this one, it'll be there all the time. So not just when you hover, both when you hover and when you're not hovering over it. I think I'm going to leave it just like that. If you want text shadow, it'll lift that text off that background a little bit. Just choose whichever. You can see it's putting a little dark shadow behind that text there. It's actually pretty good for buttons. It does just help that text stand out a little bit more. And you can change the length and color and shadow blur effect here. That's actually more effective on box shadow. Spacing wise, this is where things get rather interesting. Now margin, if you've watched any of the other videos, is the space outside of a module. And you can move things up and down by using margin. So if I put, say, 30 pixels on the top, it's pushed it down by 30 pixels. If I put a negative sign in front of that, and you can only do this with margin, not padding, if I put a negative sign in front of that, it'll actually raise it up by 30 pixels. Then if you want to leave it where it is, just like that. Now padding is the internal, from where that text is to the outside of the border there, or the inside of the border actually in this case. So if we were to give this, say 10 pixels on the top, put the same amount on the bottom by hitting the chain, or you can have a completely different amount there if you want to. We can also add more to the left and right. Just put in the 20, it'll put in the pix, hit the chain, it'll do the opposite side for you. Want to be a little bit careful with that icon, it sort of offsets it a little bit. So if you uncheck the chain, you can sort of counter that icon by giving it a little more on the right or something like that, whatever works for you. Now, box shadow is great fun. So in box shadow, it's going to put a little shadow under there. I've got a black background, so it's not going to show up too well. But what I'll do is I'll show you a few different options. On dark backgrounds, you can create some great effects. Let's put in perhaps this one that's box shadow all around. Like I say, you can't see anything there because it's really dark on black. But if I go down here and I change that to perhaps a blue, you've got a little blue glow around the back of that button there. I roll up just a little bit. I'm going to leave the horizontal position. Horizontal is going to move the shadow left or right. Vertical is going to move it up and down. But if I put the blur strength up a little bit and the spread up a little bit and change it to a white, you can really see that glow behind there. If we actually click on the color and bring the opacity down, so it's just a little glow on the background, you can really make things stand out. And like I say, if you change the color, you can get some nice little neon effects going on. Play with it, have some fun. It's an awesome thing to know. I'm going to leave it on that white with the opacity down, so there's just a hint of a glow behind it. Great. And like I say, on dark backgrounds, it just acts as a shadow to pull that off a page a little bit. You can decide whether to have that shadow on the outside or on the inside. Because I've got a light color, it may look a bit strange. Let's flip it to the inside by going to inner shadow, and I'll change it back to a black color just so you can see what's going on there. And the different variants, obviously, will do different versions. Gives it that internal contour right there. Great. Well, I'm happy with that. I'm actually going to turn that box shadow back off by hitting the little round icon there. Okay. Filters. We did a whole video on filters. You can change colors, get some crazy things going. Saturation, brightness, contrast. You can invert colors and things like that. We did that with our demo down here with this particular module right here. Opacity, we just seen, is the transparency. You can fade things in and out of the backgrounds by using the opacity. Blur is self-explanatory. It's like me when I take my glasses off. Blend mode, you can actually blend things with backgrounds. Transform, we're going to do a whole video on this. This is really, you've got scale, which makes things bigger or smaller. And you can actually make some wonderful hover effects with this. In fact, I'll do that in a second for you. You can grab this. There's a little chain there. It'll do both sides at once if you slide the slider for the chain's checked. If you uncheck it, you can do each side individually. And of course, you can type in a value or just delete things to get things back to how they were originally. So you've got scale, that makes it bigger and smaller. You've got translate, which will move it. You've got rotate, which will spin it, obviously. You've got skew. And you've got transform origin. Transform origin is the point by which it rotates. So let's just create a quick hover effect for you here just to demonstrate this. Let's perhaps have this button grow when we hover on it. And this is common to all Divi modules. If you roll over the dark writing within any section, you'll see some little icons appear. If there's an arrow, we can create a hover effect. You get two tabs. Desktop's when your mouse is not on it. Obviously, hover is when your mouse is on it. So when they hover on it, let's make it grow a little bit. So I've clicked on the hover tab. I'm going to set the setting that I want, maybe this much bigger. And then on the desktop tab, it's going to return to its normal size. And we can combine that with a color change as well. I might do that for you in a moment. Now, the time it takes to get from this version to this version by default with Divi is 300 milliseconds, just under a third of a second, which is pretty quick. If you want to change that, you can always do it in advanced. And this is for every module under transitions here. There's the default 300. There's the delay. That means if you put your mouse on it, you can put a value in there. It won't do anything until that value's been passed. And you've got transition speed curves here. I'm going to do a whole thing on hover effects and things. So I'll leave it just like that. We've got a little hover effect on there. Below that, you've got animation. This is what happens when the page loads. At the moment, we've got nothing going on there. You can have a fade, so the button fades in when the page loads, slides in, bounces in, zooms, flips, folds, or you can have it roll in, however you wish with one of these. I'm going to leave mine on none, but there's quite a few little options there. This will happen, like I say, when the page loads. That's how you'll see it fade in or spin in. Great, well, let's close this up. Let's go back to our button at the top here, and I'll show you how to split up colors with a gradient. Remember, we're using custom styles. If we go down now, let's go over to gradient. I'll give it a background gradient. And you can split this up into as many stops as you want by just left clicking to add a new stop. Left click again on it to add the color that you want it to be. That's a pretty stupid color. To get rid of a stop, just right click on it. Remove gradient stop, you're back to how you are. Okay, well, let's make this 2 crazy colors. Let's make it the default blue perhaps over here, which is a little bit darker than that one. And let's make it maybe orange over here. This might not work. If we roll down, you've got all kind of different gradients. Linear is they're stacked on top of each other. Circular, elliptical, conical. I'll do a whole video on the gradients. But what you can do, if we go up here, you can actually pull these colors closer to each other. And you can actually put them on top of each other if you want to. I'm making mine halfway at 50%. I'm going to put them on top of each other. Look what happens there. We've got 2 completely separate colors. And if you go down to gradient type, you can flip them around to a circular version or an elliptical. You can get some marvelous effects doing this. I'm going to leave mine on linear and also almost create something exactly like that. I'll put it back to linear. It's kind of horizontal there. Just down below linear, we've got gradient direction here. You can flip it around however you want. Just take that back a little bit, something like that. Or put it however you want. And you can get some wonderfully split buttons. And you can actually position that right between the 2 words, or if you've got more words, by just sliding the slider up or down to wherever you want it right there. Make sure they're still on top of each other. And that's another great little effect to have on a button. So there's a bunch of things you can do with buttons. Well, let's save this now. Just see what it's going to look like on the front end. Hit the save button at the bottom. Let's exit the visual builder. And we'll go down. And it should grow a little bit when we hover over it. And of course, you can change those gradient colors on hover. That's quite a nice little interesting button. Now you can make buttons out of any module you like. Just to demonstrate that, let's enable the visual builder again. Let's go down. Let's add a new little module underneath this one. Little dark button for a module. Pretty much any module you want. Let's perhaps use just an icon to keep it simple. Let's pop in perhaps, well, let's use that same one as we used before right there. I'm going to leave it just like that. If we look down just below it, we've got link. So just like a button, you can put a link in there. I'm just going to put a hashtag for a placeholder. Same best practices apply. Let's just go to our design, our icon. I'm happy with it to be blue, but let's have it go orange on hover perhaps. To do that, just roll over the dark writing when it says icon color. If there's an arrow there, there is. We can create a hover state, we know that. Desktop, I'll keep it blue. When they hover over it, I'm going to make it orange. Great. We'll save this now. And we've just made a button out of an icon. Like I say, using that link feature, you can do that with just about any module you want. You can have 2-line buttons and things like that. And we've done that in previous videos. So there you go, guys. There's an overview of using Divi buttons. And you can come up with some wonderful designs. You really can. I hope you've enjoyed this today and found it useful. If you have, please give it a thumbs up, ring the bell, comment, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Once again, this has been Jamie from System22 and webdesignandtechtips.com. Thanks for watching. Have a great day. day.